Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to One Nation Under God. We got a special one, a good one for you today. Neil Johnson, Lumberjack Logic. Sir, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Love you, brother. How you doing?
We're doing all right here. We're just suffering through the rain here in Minnesota. It's been a few rainy days, but other than that, okay.
That's good. Well, it's the end of April. Shoot, I was just like, where are we? What is it? The 29th? Yeah. I mean, we got May, June, July, August, September, October, right? Less than 200 days before the election is here. What do you think the Democrats are going to be doing next? So we see the lawfare, we saw the raid, we see the fake news, but nothing's working. Nothing. Look at the polls. Nothing's working. Even at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you probably saw the videos. The dude stands up, the comedian, and mocks Joe Biden, mocks his approval rating, mocks his job, the economy, the border, and everyone just sits there and laughs because they know it's true. But this is where they're the most dangerous, in my opinion, is when they're desperate.
Well, actually, I think when they're desperate, it's kind of like as you see evil become more desperate in general, I think it's actually when they play their worst hands and when they expose themselves the most. So in many respects, it's actually better this way. I think for a long time, Vlad, we had a situation in this country where there was this tacit, almost like a detente where, those on the right didn't want to make too many waves and those on the left were getting their way. And so there was just this false peace that existed. Donald Trump really came in and upended all of that simply by the virtue of him being him. And I thought at times, and I've heard other people say that Trump brings a lot of this on himself, and maybe he shouldn't tweet as much. Maybe he shouldn't say the things he does. But it's actually something, and I was a big fan of Reagan. I liked his adroitness, his political savvy. But I think we needed what's taking place right now. The thing with Trump is he ripped the Band-Aid off. He made the lines so stark and the division so real. And, not on all the issues I'd like to see. I mean, some of the cultural issues, I feel Trump isn't as strong as I want him to be. But ultimately, when you look at the issues of globalism and how they're destroying our dollar, the issues of global trade, the issues of the uniparty, the issues of the one worlders out to basically, have us subjugated to a one world government instead of relying upon our own constitution. Those battle lines have been starkly drawn. That divide is just right there now. It's seen and it's evident. And I think that's due to Trump being as maybe bombastic as he is. And so I think actually it's been good, even though it's maybe not how I saw things at first. Quick story, Vlad. When Trump came in and he really pressured China on trade, I was thinking, I kind of like trade with China in the sense that I feel if China's trading with us, then there's going to be more potential for peace with China because they're benefactors of our economy, we're benefactors of their production, and so on. But Trump exposed just how bad the trade deal was, and I didn't realize that. So that's just one example, and the media was having a freak out. If you'll remember this, when Trump got elected and Trump said the things he did about China and trade, they were like freaking out. And he's going to start World War III. And now look, here we are. And somebody's trying to start World War III, but it ain't Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, I find that all to be fascinating. I've learned a lot through this time. Yeah, NATO, pay up.
Yeah,
pay up.
NATO wasn't paying.
He just
everywhere. We had a horrible trade deal with Canada. I mean, plus
and Mexico.
Europe. But the biggest one of all was always this: Russia's our supposed enemy. That's what everyone kept saying. We are protecting Europe because they're all behind on their bills in NATO. America does not need NATO. NATO needs the United States. We will survive. When has NATO ever helped us? we're always helping NATO and we're paying the most. So while we're paying to protect them, Germany, the richest country in Europe, goes to Russia, multi-billion dollar, gas pipeline deal, to where they know, hey, if, they got some tensions with Ukraine, if Russia does this, they don't need Ukraine anymore, because before Nord Stream 1 and 2, pipelines went through Ukraine. Now Ukraine doesn't need to exist at all, because that was the only thing they produced to the world. And they knew that. They're telling us they're enemies, but they're giving them billions. That issue actually gets on my nerve a lot. Like this specific one, how we've been ripped off. And you're right, Trump exposed them. But here we come back. It's, election year. We see, let's be open and direct about with Dominion, Dominion is still there. We know Mike Lindell is doing a lot of great work. You've had Mike Lindell on recently. Here's from what I know, Mike Lindell he says, I can't say a lot of things because, a couple counties removed Dominion and got sued. So now we're removing, but we're not saying where they're being removed from. How much do you know about that, if anything?
I was actually on the phone with Mike's office. He was down at Mar-a-Lago celebrating his anniversary, actually, this last week. And so I wasn't able to get him on the show. I'll probably have him on this week. But they just had a conference with these sheriffs, and that was down in Las Vegas, and other election officials. And so there's more to learn out of that. But again, he's going to be somewhat tight-lipped about it. I think there's a lot of efforts that are underway. There are counties that are going to hand counting and paper ballots. So where that all ends, I don't know. And, to your point earlier in the show, you talked about the fact that Trump is up in all the polls, and everybody can see that every single swing state. He's up actually in the national popular vote poll, which that in and of itself is amazing. He's never led in the national popular vote poll before. And a lot of people don't realize that. So they, things aren't as bleak in terms of the election as people think, because you inflate voter rolls ahead of the election, right? That's how this is done. So like you go take a state like Michigan. I think it was 2 months before the 2020 election, the voter rolls were inflated by 500,000 voters. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens if you are winning by more than 500,000? At some point, people call it too big to rig, what have you. You just have to do all you can do. There are things that are outside of your control, and I'm speaking right now to your audience. Look, there are things that are outside of your control in this process. There are things that are well within your control. So let's talk specifically about the things that are within your control. What can you do? You can register voters. You can do that. Lou Valentino is doing it on the streets of New York right now. I just went to the largest gun fair in the state of Minnesota, actually the largest drive-by gun fair in the whole country. We had a blast. Took my kids. They all got guns. It was great. Support the Second Amendment by buying guns. Okay. Yeah. But at that, there was a guy there registering voters. And most sportsmen and women, most hunters they're not involved in elections. They are not voting. So but they're mostly conservative. So again, go to your local bar if you're in the country, during hunting season, register voters. These are things you can do. What else can you do? You can get involved in the election apparatus. I'm an election judge. I asked people on my show to be election judges. I became one. Okay. I've been a poll watcher. These are all, again, things that you can do. You can petition your county. You can get involved with your county to move it towards hand counting paper ballots. These are all things that you can do on the local level. The national problems will be solved by local action, by you getting involved in doing the things you can on that local level. Okay, you can also you can file FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act requests. You can also file pro se lawsuits. There's just so much that we can do individually to take individual action. So again, you look at this whole big problem, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to be like, it's hopeless. until you start taking action yourself. And once you take action, once you're involved in the fight, you will see that the fight is winnable. The other thing I mentioned, I saw somebody from the state GOP there at that same event, and I talked to him, and you need to go to your local caucuses. The grassroots people at the caucus level are some of the best people you're going to meet. Everybody talks about starting a third party. Look, we're going to be 10 years in the wilderness starting a third party. I mean, I kind of like to see a third party too. I'd like to see more parties, whatever. Maybe maybe a binary choice is good. It's certainly good in this case, because whether we want to accept it or not, Trump is unpopular with certain demographics, but they're going to vote for him over Biden because Biden sucks that bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So the binary choice works for us in this election. But, I know a lot of people in our audience, man, they love Trump. Okay. So they think, well, how can somebody not love Trump? I read a fascinating article today, Vlad, about the gal who's really behind the scenes running a lot of stuff in Trump world. Susan, I don't remember her last name right now, but it was a fascinating read because she's worked for many people in the establishment. I mean, she worked on Bush's campaign, DeSantis' campaign, and she has been working with Trump now since 2020, and she is one of his staunchest allies. And she said something. She said, if people could see the Donald Trump that I see, they wouldn't believe that he would do the things that the media is telling you that he's going to do. And she's a Presbyterian, very low key gal. It just isn't. So people who get inside Trump world and really know him and are honest and aren't just seeking political fame on CNN actually have a very favorable impression of Donald Trump. But that's still not what everybody's seeing through the media. So I think when you look at that. You just have to get involved in the party apparatus, local election apparatus. These are the things that you can do as individual citizens to change this country. And if you don't do it, we're losing it. We're going to lose our country.
So I have like a bunch of nieces, nephews, younger cousins who turned 18 after 2020. Oh, I got them all registered. They were. I came here, I was 6. So all my nieces, nephews, everyone was born here. I have older relatives who have been in the United States 20, 30 years. They're now, but they're older. They're citizens now. But even they're like, man, we miss Trump. Like we'll be at like some like family gathering, or I'll be at my parents' house and my uncles or aunt someone come over, boom, quickly in Washington State. You register online. And then they send you a ballot in the mail, and then you can either drop it off at the voting location or mail it back. Like you can either go downtown, and I tell them go downtown like on election day or even before. You literally come up to the door and just drop it in there, and it falls into a box there. But because in Washington, yes, they use Dominion, I believe, but you don't see it go through the machine like in Arizona. Like they take it on the truck and take it somewhere else, and we don't know where they take it. But we have like here right now, we have this guy, Semi Bird, coming up. I gotta share about him, dude. This guy is never been in politics, self-made millionaire, veteran. The Democrats call him the Black Trump of Washington. Just appears out of nowhere from Tri-Cities. It's 100,000 population, small town. The Republican convention was in my city. They wanted to just kick him off the ballot, the Republicans. They didn't give nobody an account. There were thousands of people from all over the state who showed up just for him. Caused such an uproar. 3 Republicans just left. They said, we're running as independents. We don't want to run against him. And the dude that's like a really good friends with our current Democrat governor, which you're a Republican, how are you getting along with him? He's the only one who's like running against Semi Bird as a Republican. But yeah, and you're right, we got to do what we can, register people, go out, volunteer. And I tell my audience this often, it's very important that what's the right phrase? It's very important that not only do we go out and vote, but we get everybody out and go, and not be scared to debate Democrats. I today I know 4 people personally who voted for Hillary, then Biden, and they've decided to vote. I mean, they decided to vote for Trump 2 years ago. You know, you just keep an open dialogue because the media isn't showing people stuff, and we need to stop playing defense for Trump. I mean, after the last 4 years of Trump and then what we have now with Biden, there's no room for defense. Defend what? I mean, even now they're running on the same thing. Any media, they're running the same narrative as they did in 2015. World War III, war with Iran, war with China. None of it happened. He's going to go after his enemies. Everything they said he was going to do, he never did, but now they are doing it. But nothing's worked so far, so they're going back to the same tactics, right? What's the definition of being stupid? Doing the same thing over and over, thinking it's going to bring a different outcome. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a George calls them projectocrats. I think it was one of the best words he ever came up with. Projectocrats. I don't know. They're running the same playbook. I think the playbook's old and tired. I think everybody sees through it right now. Not everybody. I shouldn't say that. When I say everybody, I'm just talking majority. Because there's 20% of this population people. I don't care what you say to them, what kind of questions you ask them. They are so stuck in the mud, they're not coming out of it. But there are people, independents and classic liberals, classic Democrats, where if you ask them the right questions, you can swing them. You can swing them. I mean, and that's the thing. Whether you're in the grocery store line, whether you're at the coffee shop, wherever you are, just ask good questions. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago under Trump? Think back to 2019. What did you think of the economy then versus what it is now? What did you think of gas prices then versus what they are now? Do you really think that everything the media is saying about Trump is true? Knowing, from his last term, did he jail all his political enemies then? You just got to ask these questions. And, I think people can see the disingenuousness of the mainstream media at this point. I mean, they're, and then there's controlled opposition like Fox News or, I just saw it happen the other day that governor of Utah in the convention out there. I don't know if you saw that, but the guy's name is Cox, the last name of the current governor. And the guy running against him, and I forget the names right now, but it was like 65-35. He won at convention, the challenger. And Cox is just a rhino. He's the NEA gives him money. That's, by definition, that's controlled opposition. When the opposition, the NEA, National Education Association, full on leftard, is giving money to that candidate, that's controlled opposition. He's taking money from them because, look, don't think there isn't an exchange in politics. When they give money, they're expecting certain things. Oftentimes they talk to the candidate to make sure that the expected things they can get. Okay. That's the reality of the situation. There are other times when people give money to political candidates out of desperation, thinking, my gosh, if I don't give, the other person could win. There is that. But no, this guy Cox, and he just got soundly trounced. Now there is still, he could win through primary, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we're at a point now where the more we see in the GOP that we despise, the more we see that these people aren't doing right by us. Because I honestly think, Vlad, that the real problem with elections right now is a binary choice between a rhino and a Democrat. And this really happens in red states more than anywhere else. So we're talking Utah in this last example. Utah is as red as it gets. Yet here we go with that story. There was a story I did 2 years ago on Landmark Communications or whatever, Landmark Group, out of Georgia, where they were running Democrats under Republican on the Republican ticket. People who were pro-abortion, all of that. And so this is what they do. If they can't, they know in these red states that they can't get you to vote for some far lefty. So what they do is they try to install some moderate Democrat / rhino on the ballot. And then if you haven't gotten involved in the primaries, now you're stuck with a binary choice in your host. So that's how they steal elections more than any is by simply eliminating choice or giving you the illusion of choice when the choices aren't any good.
Yeah, I remember. No, one more question, and we're gonna roll up
Okay.
and ask this to people when they come in. Your prediction. It's November 5th, 2024. What do you think happens? How do you, or your guesses, your best estimate?
Well, they've been running these stories, Vlad. Politicos run them, other news media outlets. And one of the things you'll see is the Democrats kind of leak an idea, so to speak, in the media. And so they've been talking about, how do you keep Trump from, gaining power? How do you keep him from assuming the office? And I don't think they can stop what's coming. I think the election, I actually think Trump wins the popular vote nationwide, which is quite striking. I mean, to fully understand that, in spite of everything that's going on, he's going to win some of the key swing states.
He got the.
What's that?
We know that in the real numbers, he won popular vote in 2020 and electoral. He got.
Vlad, I'm not
got
certain.
More people, maybe not more ballots, but more people.
I'm saying you go to the swing states, the race was always tight. I followed presidential polling for years, and when you aggregate the polls, and he never led in the popular vote. People talk about polls all the time and how they're bad and whatever. There are certain polls that are bad, but when you aggregate polls, there's polls that lean right, lean left, and so on. I don't know that Trump won the popular vote. Okay. You go into the key states, I can make that case. But to say that he just outright won the popular vote, I get people saying he got over 100 million votes and all that. I don't buy that. I know when you look at this through all predictors, and there's a certain contingency of people that will not admit that they're voting for Donald Trump. They just won't. Whatever, they're afraid of their friends, neighbors, relatives. I don't know. Maybe they're afraid of the FBI beats me at this point. What are they fearing? But the bottom line is that Trump's in a very, very strong position. But will they see? They're trying to say that he was an insurrectionist back on January 6th when he simply questioned things. But now they're setting it up for themselves to be the insurrectionists. That's my biggest concern. That's my biggest concern. And I think, there's the potential to see, oh, well, we don't really know, it's election night, stop the count, and stuff like that. But, they have to have people on the rolls. And there's some good people doing good work out there fighting on those voter rolls. The biggest the states I think that are going to be the biggest challenge is that traditional blue wall of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And not because Trump doesn't have massive support, but when you look at the key offices in those states, the key executive positions, so you can go to Michigan, you got the trifecta of evil with Whitmer, Nessel, and Benson. So there's a lot of room to pull stuff in those states. You can go to Tony Evers in Wisconsin and everything he's vetoing out there. And then you've got a Supreme Court now in Wisconsin that's controlled by liberals. That's where Trump actually won one of his lawsuits, was in Wisconsin, but now they're a liberal Supreme Court. So again, I try to look at this. I take in a lot of information, Vlad. I don't fall for, it's just, some people will just say, this is what happened. And I'm like, okay, so how do you prove that's what happened? Okay. So I'm looking at it, I take in a lot of information, I read a lot, and I go, okay, what do I actually see here? How did this go down? And what are the real numbers? And I actually think that the last election was close. It's closer than we want to see it. I do. But that doesn't mean I believe that the end result was the real result. So I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. They got people to come out on the Democrat side and vote who would never vote, no matter the outcome. But they got them to do it through mail-in voting. Democrat, it's historically proven. Republicans go out mostly and vote. Democrats usually by mail. Not a lot of states do by mail. This time, everyone got a ballot. Hundreds of millions sent out. and they were able to, but and then they just, people that stayed home, they just finished it up, ran the numbers the
Well,
way they needed to, and that's it.
I tell this story, but I went to the Michigan Secretary of State's website a day or two after the election, looked up 5 dead voters. People that had died in the 1980, one that died in 1984 or something like this. Is crazy. I mean, so, but here they had ordered a ballot, received a ballot, cast a ballot. So don't tell me dead voters weren't voting, which aren't voters. You know what I mean? But I can't call them voters. But yeah, anyways, I'm very well aware of the things that went on.
Well, thank you so much, Neil. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen Neil, which I doubt anyone here hasn't seen his channel before, go subscribe. I'm going to leave a link down below in the description. Great friend of mine. We actually started doing this like around the same time, huh? When we met, we were both brand new to the, right after, what was it? Yeah. Wow.
2020. I mean, I was November of 2020 is when I started.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. Love you, buddy.
Thanks for having me on, Vlad. Yep.
Thank you, brother.